From the dawn of time, our ancestors have left us with the tales. Stories which speak of things that they have seen and lived alongside by, feared, respected, and even looked to some of them as godlike. Modern man refers to such things as spirits, extraterrestrials, demons, cryptids, creatures, and entities of all kinds, and so much more. These things and tales are now referred by most as myths and legends. But there are those of us that know what our ancestors spoke of was the truth. Those of us that have become obsessed in searching for answers and finding out the truth are here. We need the truth. This search brings us into the realm of the unexplained and unknown. It brings us on the trail. The search for living legends. Please join JR and I on the quest, and welcome to the search.
Hey, welcome everyone to another edition of On the Trail in Search of Living Legends. It's going to be episode 12. We have an honor tonight to be joined by Mr. David Tracey from my neck of the woods. Dave, how you doing, man?
Pretty good. Glad to see you again.
You good to see? Yeah, it's been a couple of years, 3 years at least, man. At least.
Oh, definitely.
But yeah, definitely excited to get you back on, man. Definitely excited. We've all been pretty excited. We got Gary with us once again. Gary, meet David. Gary is my savior. He's Shawn's savior as well. When it comes to, he takes care of all our tech mess ups. And he's one of the most brilliant minds in the both these guys, two of the most brilliant minds in the Bigfoot field. I will say that. So yeah, not kissing ass or anything, guys. Just giving you a compliment.
You butt kisser.
And then we have Mr. Shawn Wilson, the one and only.
That's
How's
me.
it going, Shawn?
Oh man, I could tell you stories. But I'm good. I'm having a good night right now. I feel all right. Went out earlier and I got my AR-15 dialed in. I'm real happy with the performance.
Nice.
Had a good day.
Nice.
Had a good day. So.
Nice.
Yes, sir.
Nice. Yeah, we're missing. Travis is on his way back from Tennessee. Last I heard, but so he said he was going to be late. So. But I'm sure more than confident the three of us and four of us can pull off a killer show. So why don't we get that cranking? But thanks to all the viewers out there for tuning in. You're in for one hell of a show. I'll tell you that much. So David, I want to just give us a little, if you could, give us a little bio in yourself. Right. And then roll from there.
Alrighty. Basically, I'm just a lab technician at the St. Regis Mohawk Tribes Environment Division. Apart from doing that during the week, I mean, I kind of split my time between doing, some paranormal stuff. Mm-hmm. Before it was focused mainly on like Dogman. Like I get in contact with like Vic Cundiff and Josh Turner and North American Dogman Project. I haven't contacted them in a while. It's been kind of slow since a couple of years. And other than that, I mean, other times if it's a rainy day, I'll usually sit inside, play games, whatnot.
Sure.
But I've actually been having some health issues lately, so it kind of slowed down.
Shit. Sorry to hear that, man. Are you on the you live on the St. Regis side, or are you on the? Okay, so you're in St. Regis. Okay. Gotcha. All right, just curious. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you like that.
Oh, that's all right.
It was just my curiosity taking over.
But yes, at first I was kind of more focused on Dogman, but I been hearing different stories, not just about Bigfoot, but there's like we even have a legend here on the res of the Hoof Lady. And then we have, like the legends of the Wendigo and whatnot. And I hear encounters about that all the time.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Now, when did you become interested in the whole Dogman thing? What made you? I know you lived in Brazier. I know I'll let you explain it, but I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. But you lived in a different area for a while, correct? Where you also had some pretty good activity.
There's actually still activity there. I was
Oh yeah,
living with
Brazier's
my
a hot
apartment.
spot. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
That's one of my other research areas, guys. So that's we're talking about the same place.
Cool.
Very, very. They seem to be kind of testy in that area too, or if, it could be just me, but they've been whenever I've been down there, man. They've been a little temperamental, but anyway, yeah. So you still work that area, do you?
Well, right now I'm actually living on the res with my mother temporarily, mainly due to my health. Because I was having issues with, I don't know what was causing it. My doctor thinks I might have AFib, but I'm not entirely sure about that. Because my blood pressure has been like having bouts where it will skyrocket for no reason, or my heart rate will go down for some reason. It's basically all over the place. But I still have my apartment there in Brazier.
Okay.
And I have a roommate that's living there. And speaking of encounters there near Brazier, he's actually seen. Well, I'm pretty sure it might be a Dogman.
Okay.
Because he came home twice so far, and the first time he saw it was in the fall. I think late October.
Okay.
And we have an apple tree out front.
Right.
Well, the crotch of the tree is about 8 feet up in the air.
Okay.
And he came home one night and he thought he had heard something over by the tree. So he took out his tack light because he's a corrections officer. So he had his flashlight, pulled it out, and he looked at the tree. And he just saw something go behind the tree and peeked its head back out and started looking at him. And he got eye shine from it. And he immediately knew it's obviously not a person because, you shine a light at a person, their eyes don't shine.
Right, right.
He said that he actually
what color?
A glimpse of it. He said like a greenish.
Oh, okay.
Interesting.
It was like a greenish, kind of like a kind of almost like lime green almost, but really like not as bright as you'd see like typical lime green. But
have you had any of your encounters and since you lived in that apartment?
I actually haven't seen it. There's a couple nights that I thought I've heard it outside.
Like away from, have you had any of your occurrences while you lived in the apartment? What I'm saying is like not around there.
Actually, a lot of my encounters that I had before were focused in one area, which was my father's woodlot.
But you was living in the apartment at the time, right?
Yep.
Okay. I'll make note of that. Bring it back up later. Sorry.
Oh, it's all right. But my friend, when he was telling me when he saw the thing behind the tree, I thought maybe Bigfoot at first, and then it kind of switched back and forth because he said he saw an ear. So when he said he saw an ear, that immediately rang the Dogman doorbell.
Yeah.
So, and he's not really a big believer in the cryptid community. He doesn't believe in the paranormal, but until recently, he actually has kind of switched over and is starting to be more of a believer. And the reason why is because he was actually in Gettysburg for a Civil War reenactment. And, he never believed in ghosts or anything. But when he was down there, he had multiple ghost encounters down there. Where he knows for sure that he saw ghosts. Like he could see Union soldiers, their uniform and everything. And
that's cool.
You could hear him walking and everything. It was a pretty scary story. He went into a lot of detail about it, but that's what basically started him into believing cryptids and the paranormal.
Okay. Let me ask you a question. How far is from where he saw it in Brazier, correct? Brazier's not far from Bombay.
Nope. He was only literally a mile away from Brazier State Forest, probably where he saw it.
Okay, because I got a report this summer, and geez, I got another buddy in. So Louisville's not that far either, correct? From Brazier.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. We had a guest on one night, and he deals with a family group of Sasquatch, and he's starting to float on the Dogman line too, because he's had the actual Sasquatch encounters himself, but he thinks the Dogman might come around too. His little girl, she ran in one day, and the only way, how did she word it? The only way, daddy, I just saw a werewolf, and that's the only way. I can see a little girl maybe seeing a Sasquatch, being a werewolf, the only thing she can relate to. But this little girl's 11. To me, that's old enough to decipher.
Yeah.
Between, you know what I'm saying? So that's interesting in itself. That's a close proximity. And I got a report this summer. A buddy of mine called me, and his sister. You probably know the girl, dude. She is. She works for. She works for the tribe, and it's probably all I should really say about that without her permission. She was cruising down the road, and the girl, she was in the passenger seat. The girl she was with said, "Stop! You're gonna hit that thing." And she said, "What thing?" And she looked, and bang! It hopped out in the road, and they ended up about 30 feet from it. It turned, man, and when it turned, they said it was built like a professional basketball player, but it wasn't. We're just getting into this Dogman thing. We're not familiar with all the types and stuff like that. But the way they described this one to me on the phone was it had the body of a lean Sasquatch, head of a wolf, feet like a Sasquatch, and hands like ours. No tail. And then it took a leap and it was gone. They were so close, and so they were so up close and personal. They could see blood around its mouth. They could see the drool snot coming from its nose, and the eyes were like burning red coal.
So it had a snout and ears like a dog, Jeremiah?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
Okay.
Look, it looked like just like a wolf, Sean. Head just like a wolf.
That's strange.
Yeah.
Most of the Dogman encounters that I've heard of, their legs are like dog legs, and they've got feet like and then they've got the upper body of a man with the head like a German Shepherd.
Yeah, that's pretty much what this was, the head of a German Shepherd or a wolf. We do hear of those though up here too. The legs like a dog. We do hear of those too.
I wonder if there's hybrids. If somehow, who knows? I guess that's why we're
really
talking.
good. He's really Dave. What are your thoughts? You're really. If I remember, you're really educated on this stuff. You've done your homework.
My thoughts on Dogman. I mean, I've gotten scrutinized for my thoughts before, but
you won't.
I know there's definitely different. There's different types for sure. But the way I look at it, I think that it can go two ways. It's either there's some type of missing link, like an evolutionary, like maybe something that branched off of a family of canids back during the Ice Age, possibly.
Okay.
Maybe they evolved to just walk on both 4 and 2 legs.
Okay.
And maybe it was just to make themselves better hunters. But another part of me thinks that maybe they are part of the spirit world. I mean, if ghosts are a thing, maybe Dogmen could be in that realm too. Because
sure,
I know there's a lot of people out there that think that they might be spirits, but I know
or an interdimensional type thing.
Yep.
I know a lot of people are in. Yeah, we're. We're all going through that inner battle right now. What are all these things? Yeah. It's tough. We do this for so long, and it's like I always say. You always at one point or another for a couple of years you have a theory on what these creatures are, and then something happens and it throws that theory right out the window, and you start from square one again.
Yeah,
and
you
then,
talk to enough credible witnesses that have had these different experiences, especially when it comes to cloaking. And I know that some of our own team, they don't get down with that. I personally think they can, but that's me, you know.
So you're talking about Sasquatch or Dogman cloaking?
Well, both.
Probably both. I think that they're both capable of doing it, or else I'd have one hanging on my wall.
Well, I showed a video. Sorry, I'll be a second, David. This is your show. I apologize.
Oh, that's fine.
To a mutual friend of ours the other night, Shawn. The one I asked you about where the hell he'd been for the past 6 months.
Oh yeah.
Showed him a video. Some weird stuff, and these things here are usually gone by November, but I've been getting a lot of action back here, and I got some pretty funky footage the other night that I'll send to you guys after, and send it to you too, Dave. He followed me out, whatever it was, followed me out. He stared me down for about 30 seconds. I was in one spot filming him, and all of a sudden, the guy I'm referring to says, "Dude, that thing just cloaked in front of you." I really couldn't see what he was talking about, but it did follow me out. And on my way out, I turn, and there it is. And it's standing there staring at me. And I'm 6 foot. I'm almost 6 foot. And dude, this thing was about a foot, I'd say a foot and a half higher than me. You know, I mean, granted, the Sasquatches could still be around, but they're usually gone by, early to mid-November. And there's some funky stuff going on still. So who knows, man?
There's some good video, man. I've seen at least 3 good videos of these things cloaking. So that's what opened my mind and made me think. I like Kelly Shaw from Rocky Mountain Sasquatch. He's not a bullshitter. He's not a woo guy.
Right.
He's not like C. Wade and Wilson who just makes weird shit up. He's very matter of fact. He's flesh and blood. But he's got a video, and when I saw him post that, I thought there's something to this, and it makes a lot of sense to me that if they can do this, and I think it might be a biological, maybe completely scientific answer to it. Like chameleons can change their colors to blend into their background. Maybe these things can somehow utilize light to do that. I don't know,
I mean, who's to say?
I'm just open-minded to it now, to where before they were just flesh and blood. It's a monkey. We got to catch one and put it on a table.
Same here. I know that's how we all were at one time. I mean, who's to say? There's a lot of weird stuff. We know the paranormal. I mean, my wife has opened my eyes to the paranormal world over the past 6 years, and the stuff has just blown my mind. And so, if that goes on with human spirit in human paranormal activity, who says that these creatures can't go between both realms? I don't know. I'm gonna get going on a rant here, and I won't be able to shut my mouth.
Well, even if, in my situation, Jeremiah knows, I lived up there at that Skinwalker Ranch for multiple years, right on the north end of it, and there's a lot of crazy stuff going on up there. And
sure,
I don't have any doubt that I'll be the one to say it. Shawn, the one he was talking about that says that they don't cloak, that's me. I'm the real physical tracking. But I open up my ears and eyes to it, especially with, because we don't know what they can do and what they can't do. But I did want to get back on living at the Skinwalker Ranch. They had like 3 different types of dogmen encounter up there. They had the gigantic dire wolf looking thing that they shot 4 or 5 times. They had one that literally like cloaked. and would step in and out of portals and stuff that looked like the Dogman. And then
Mhm.
supposedly they had a couple of guards looking. They thought they was guards wearing trench coats with Doberman heads. Was one.
Oh wow.
So we don't know. But I did want to ask you: do you think that maybe the Dogmen? I noticed you had said something about the difference in the size and structure and the way their legs and stuff. Do you think that they could have a genetic variances like Sasquatch does? Like any other breed of species on
I
the
think
planet?
so.
You do?
I guess, I mean, maybe if you want to compare them to something, I mean, maybe they're like dogs. Like
Were they
you got all
different,
kinds
like
of different
Dobermans?
domestic dogs.
Yeah.
I never
Yeah.
thought about that. It's
Because you look into the Wisconsin thing in Minnesota, Linda Godfrey, she's like the Dogman guru. They talk about the
Mhm.
underworld series type Dogmen that looks like a dog standing on its hind legs, and then you have
Yes.
the bear style, which is like a Sasquatch body with the snout and wolf head, and then you have the actual werewolf or shapeshifter, which looks partially human, like the Wolfman.
Right.
Maybe we have different variations in it, or physically. I don't know.
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean, like you said earlier, Shawn, you where you're at, your accounts of the ones with the dog legs, right? Up here,
Yeah.
from what I've heard, Dave, I don't know about what you've heard, or what but what I've heard a lot of the stories about the description of them looking like a basketball player, no tail, legs like a Sasquatch or human, however you want to put it. 400, 450 pounds, head like a wolf, ears stand straight up. But yeah, who knows?
Yep.
Who knows? I guess it's definitely an interesting topic. I know what I wanted to ask you. When you was that you we talked about that den you found?
Yep, that was actually the very first encounter that I had where I didn't
Okay.
actually see the Dogman. I
Yeah.
think we busted into its lair, which was a big no-no. And I mean, ever since then, I mean, it's gone now because everything got flooded out back there because Ducks Unlimited came back and they dug up ponds for the geese and the ducks back there. So it's kind of like a little sanctuary.
I know this
And
very well.
where that den was eventually got flooded out, and the water washed it away. So there's nothing left there anymore.
And that was
David, could you back up a little bit and tell us about that? I'd like to hear it. What did you find?
So what we did find is this was back when I was just a young kid. I mean, I was still, I think, 6th or 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I went back there with a friend, and we used to drive the 4-wheeler back there. We used to mess around because, I mean, the swamp back there always drew our attention because, I mean, we're little kids, we wanted to go back there and mess around with, frogs and leeches and whatnot we could find in the swamp. And one day we went back to the very far end of the swamp, and there was a creek that you couldn't really cross, so we decided to build a bridge. And we just went back there with hammer and nails. We just used logs and whatnot, built a ramshackle bridge across the creek. And that's when I noticed that there was like an abandoned beaver hut that was up on the embankment. And I thought it was kind of weird because it actually had a hole dug out in the side that was big enough, for a large person to fit through.
Wow.
So my friend had his cell phone. And this is back when we had just the cheap, Net 10 phones. They weren't really all that good. So he had a flashlight on it, and he went in there because I wasn't going in. I was too scared. And he went in, and when he looked around, he said there was there's different compartments down there. Like when you walked into the den, like there's the first area, and basically it was just a dugout spot inside of the beaver hut that was just big enough for something to maybe lay around inside. And then there was another hole that was dug out that went to a second chamber, and then there was a third one down there. So it was basically like a little miniature cave system, essentially. But it was big enough for something, a Bigfoot could have fit into it if they wanted to squeeze
Holy
in
shit.
there. And he went in, and when he got into the second chamber is when he started finding bones. And he was more of a hunter than I was at the time, because I was still young. I wasn't really into hunting at that time. My dad hadn't really taken me out much, and he assumed they were deer bones. And when he went into the third chamber, he saw what he thought was human clothing, and it was all torn up. It was old.
Oh, wow.
And he found a jacket, and he said it was a like medium-sized child's jacket that had distinct claw marks in it. He said there was 4 claw marks in it. And when he was looking around, he saw more bones. And of course, if you look at human bones and white-tailed deer bones, they actually look the same. And he said, but with all the bones that were down there, it was really hard to distinguish what was what, because he said that he saw there was a pig skull in there. He said he saw a cow skull and all kinds of different bones, like from whitetail. There was even turkey bones in there. There was everything. He didn't see a human skull though, but it was the clothing that freaked him out, because he thought that he saw blood marks on the jacket. And at first, he thought nothing of it, and he thought, maybe an animal just found someone's jacket and thought, hey, this would make really good bedding, and dragged it back into the den. And while he was in there looking, I kept hearing something off in the trees, and it was cracking branches and whatnot. I was walking around, and it seemed like it was doing like a crescent circle, kind of like a half circle, walking back and forth, listening to us to see what we were doing. And I told him, I want to get out of here. Whatever this thing is, it's probably watching us, and we're probably invading its home. So, he took a couple of pictures, and he got out of the den, and we got back on the 4-wheeler after getting across the bridge and took off. But because he had such a crappy phone, they took horrible pictures. You couldn't really see much. It was because it was so dark in there. So we couldn't really use the pictures for anything. But
wow,
I remember he said he gave him nightmares because of what he saw in that jacket. And he was actually telling me, he's like, it reminded me of like what you'd see in a werewolf movie. Like he said, the claw marks, like they looked like, some kid had been out playing, and this thing came and just ambushed the kid, one quick swipe across the chest and killed him. And I didn't believe it, and we didn't want to believe it, but we figured, we didn't see any human remains there. He didn't see any. So we just like to set on the thought that it might just be someone's clothing that they found and dragged into the den to use as like bedding.
Right.
But we actually wanted to go back there a couple years after, but that's when Ducks Unlimited came in. And before we could actually go back to the den and I could actually get in there and take a good look around, the water washed everything away. So whatever was living in there obviously had to move.
Wow.
After hearing that, I've heard that story with when you interviewed Josh, and going back to what I asked you earlier about if you'd had any sightings in that general vicinity. One of the most common things with Dogman is they'll actually follow you and track you, and I'm wondering if you might be one of the few chosen to be tracked and messed with.
I'm thinking so. There's people here on the reserve that have told me about, they don't call it Dogman or werewolves. Around here, they usually just call it, the black wolves. A lot of the old folks that have told me this, and this is like back when I was working for Housing Authority. And I also heard one story, and this was actually from a friend of mine when I was doing World War II reenacting. We went down to Pennsylvania to Reading, and one of the gentlemen there he's an Australian, he's a reenactor. And he said that there was actually a report of somebody being absolutely ripped apart out in the bush by some type of unknown creature. They said they did an investigation on it. They thought it was dingoes. And then when they looked further into the investigation, they actually found what was left of the guy. Because when they found the actual location of the attack, there wasn't much left. They found strips of flesh, clothing, and whatnot, and a couple of like detached body parts, like his legs. And they found the rest of the guy like 100 yards away up in a tree.
Jesus.
And
oh my God.
they immediately ruled out dingoes, and they were thinking about like big cats. And then I thought about it for a while, and it's like, wait, does Australia have any big cats though? I was like, I can't remember if they do or not, but what really freaked them out was they said they found paw prints there, big paw prints, like bear-sized canine paw prints. And this tree that his body was up in had like really distinct claw marks from whatever had crawled up and brought him with it. And basically that story was like the talk of the town for about a couple of days, and all of a sudden it went hush hush. And then all the blame immediately that they just put it on dingoes. That was it. And he said he never heard anything else from it.
Wow.
And I mean, Josh Turner and like Vic Cundiff on their show, they had a couple of episodes where they talked about people missing 411, like David Paulides. And I remember there's 2 episodes where he actually dug into some case reports of people being attacked by unknown animals. And I mean, whether or not it's Dogman, I think I kind of lean towards it, because I mean, especially like the one episode where he mentioned an older lady, something broke into her house and literally went in, killed her, partially devoured her, and her dog was actually found upstairs hiding under the bed. And they blamed her dog for it, but her dog had no blood on it at all. So obviously the dog did not do it.
Dog didn't do it. Yeah.
Did you happen to catch the episode where they talking about where they was coming down the stairway and seen the dog man trying to come through the dog door?
Oh yeah, I remember that one too.
Dude.
That one actually, because I used to listen to these a lot at night, like especially when I was going to bed. And I mean, some of those stories, man, like I'm glad I'm not any of those people, because their encounters are fucking scary.
Yeah, I mean, and that's my whole point. It's like you don't get no differentiation in Dogman. It's like if you see one, they're aggressive or they're evil. They track you down and they torment you.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's like David Paulides and his missing 411. I have no doubt that some of those are probably people that have been attacked and eaten by Dogman, or maybe even a rogue Sasquatch. It's hard to tell, because I mean, going on to like the side of Bigfoot, I mean, when I was in Montana, our guide, I can't really say his name, but he told me that he heard stories of hunters being found like wedged into like the notch of a tree, like the hollowed part of a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And you naturally wouldn't be able to fit anybody in there, but he said that people were stuffed into this tree, and they would find like their guns basically destroyed or bent and whatnot, and abnormally large human-like footprints around the area. There was actually a couple cases that he told me about that were like that, and they think it was a Bigfoot.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
I think that's happened for sure.
Oh yeah.
Well, I gotta hear your. I mean, I think we all want to hear your personal eyewitness accounts. That's the main thing. I'm real curious, because as far as I'm concerned, Jeremiah says you're legit. That's all I need to know.
I mean, I know the 2 encounters that I had that were face to face were they still give me nightmares, to this very day. But I mean, I've basically learned to cope with it. And it's like, whatever this creature was, obviously it was a dog man. It didn't seem like it wanted to hurt me, but I mean, there was also a couple of other factors that leaned into why it vanished after I saw it. And the one encounter I want to touch on, that when I saw it face to face, like, I mean, this thing was 25 feet away. Whoa. Maybe. And this thing was ugly. I mean, if you want to, like, the best comparison for it would be, if you guys have seen the movie Bad Moon, it looked just like the werewolf from that movie, but just not with the normal human-like legs. It had the backward bent legs. But this was actually during a coyote hunt.
Ooh.
And my dad had got me a coyote collar for Christmas, an electronic one. So we were call blasting all day long. I mean, we were all over our property, and I mean, all the property added together, I'd say it's probably close to 700 or 800 acres. And we'd been call blasting all day trying to get coyotes to come out, and we hadn't seen anything. I mean, we'd stopped in different spots, and I think there was about 6 or 7 of us that day, but we were all spread out because we wanted to be as far apart as possible, not to spook any of the coyotes away, because if they see a large group of guys, they already know what's up. And after about 2 hours of call blasting, this was, I think, early afternoon, we actually had this really nasty fog that came in. I think it was because of the temperature change, because it was cold that morning and then it warmed up, and we had about a foot of snow. So the fog started to come up off the snow, and you couldn't see 10 feet, I think. And eventually we got to what we call, it's the hemlock forest, and it's behind our camp. And it's a really large section of hemlock. And I mean, even during the day, it can be pitch black. If it's on a cloudy day, good luck seeing anything in there. I mean, unless it's like right on top of you. And my dad and the rest of the crew went into the camp to warm up, and his son stayed with me, and we decided to, we left the call blaster back at the camp, and we just took a walk out back to, see if we'd see any coyotes. And what was really creepy is, like, as soon as we walked into the hemlocks, the coyotes just went berserk. Like, they'd been following us, I think, for the day, but they just started howling and yipping, and I mean, they were just going nuts, and it was super loud. And there must have been 24 of those things. It was just that loud. And my dad's friend, his son, stayed there next to the entrance to the hemlock forest, because there's actually a trail there that the coyotes will use. And I had him sit there and wait, and I walked off into the hemlock forest, and I walked down the road, and I'd walked about 500 yards, and we have like this plastic chair that my dad put there for one of our deer drives, and I picked it up out of the snow and I sat down. And of course, this hemlock forest, it was still really dark where I was sitting, and you get like beams of sunlight that would come through in a couple other spots. I mean, it was super cloudy that day, so the sun was kind of just off and on. And what happened was, as soon as I sat down, the coyotes started going nuts again. And as I was sitting there, I thought I heard something crashing through the trees, and I was like, did they spook a deer? Are they hunting a deer? And I got my gun up, and of course, I was only carrying a 20 gauge that day with slugs, because I mean, that was my best coyote gun that I had at the time. I didn't have anything, decent for shooting coyotes. My dad had all the good stuff. But when this thing came crashing through the woods, I didn't see it until it was right on me, and I was 25 feet away. And when it was crashing through the woods, I mean, it was like having a 1,000-pound grizzly bear coming charging through the trees. And when I saw the figure starting to come through the fog, at 25 feet away, I at first thought it was a Bigfoot, because I saw a humanoid figure, and I was like, what the hell is that? And then it started getting closer and closer. And that's why I noticed the ears, and then I noticed the legs. And at that point, I mean, I was almost ready to piss my pants, because when I saw this thing, like I thought I was either dreaming, or I mean, it's like I had a monster, like a werewolf, walking towards me. So I was too scared to raise my gun. And when this thing finally got out towards the road, it finally stopped, and it saw me. And that's when I got the best look of its face and its body. And it was like a grayish black. It had like gray hair, but it had like, the distinct little black hairs within its pelt. And when it looked at me, like, it was kind of, shocked that it had seen me sitting in the chair. And when it sat there for a little bit, kind of like processed what I was, and then its lips curled back. And that's when I kind of got the feeling that this thing is in hunting mode. And the way it was looking, I knew it was the look of a predator. But I don't know what it was, it be a miracle or whatever. When this thing stepped forward towards me, it broke a branch. And lucky for me, where I was sitting, I walked back there super quiet. And a lot of hunters know that spruce trees have ruffed grouse. Grouse love to hide in the trees because that's where they sleep and they eat there. Well, when this thing broke the branch, it spooked. I don't know how many of them were up in the tree, but I guess hunters call them a thunder of grouse because when they fly off, it sounds like thunder.
Oh yeah.
And they took off out of the tree, and there was so many of them that when they took off, the snow fell out of the tree, and the grouse just went flying through the trees and they vanished. Well, they either startled this thing or it saw them and thought about them as food, but it completely ignored me, turned in the opposite direction, and then chased after the birds. And I basically sat there in shock for, a good 3 or 4 minutes before I got up and took off running back to the camp. And I mean, my dad, he doesn't believe in any of that stuff. I don't tell him about it because I already know that, he thinks I'm full of shit. And, he doesn't believe any of that stuff because he's been out in the woods, but he's never seen this stuff before. And I know that he's seen signs of it. He's just in denial. But when I got back to camp, I didn't tell him what it was, but he knew I was scared shitless. I mean, I came back pale as a ghost. And yeah, it still gives me nightmares, like I said.
Yeah, we can all relate to that for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's tough to have a situation like that too, where you really want to. I mean, you just saw a monster, and you want to tell the closest people to you, and you do. I mean, I did. Fully sincere. I mean, and when people tell you you're full of shit, it's tough, man. But you're in good company here because I have no doubt you saw what you saw.
Yeah.
And man, that's a terrifying experience. I don't know. I don't know if I could ever go back in the woods after something like that. That's crazy.
See, that was the bad thing about it, because I mean, I'm not getting along with my dad right now, unfortunately, but at that time I felt it was my responsibility to go and visit with him and hunt with him, no matter how much I didn't want to go, because I didn't want to upset him. So I would always go and I'd hunt with him. But in the back of my mind, like, I didn't want to be too far away from anybody else because I knew that this thing is out there lurking around. And what was funny is it wasn't an encounter that I had with that creature, but I was on Vic's show talking about the Bigfoot that I know we have. It either is or maybe it's not there anymore. But we had a Bigfoot that was hanging out on our property for years and years. I mean, ever since my dad had me hunting there when I was just a little guy, I would catch glimpses of him or glimpses of this guy like all the time.
Is this your grandparents on the res?
Nope, this is my father's property, like near Herman.
Okay, yep. Okay, sorry about that.
It's like it was a fairly large, I'm pretty sure it was a male Bigfoot, and he was like a pitch black color, but I would catch glimpses of him all the time. I mean, I would see him poking his head around the tree watching me, and I think over time, like, I knew that, I mean, when I first saw him, I was scared of him. As a kid, I didn't know what he was. And then as the years went by and seeing him more and more and more during hunting season, I realized that, he wasn't there to hurt me.
Right.
And it actually came to that point where I was actually taking food from the camp, like apples and Pop-Tarts. And whenever I'd go on set in areas where I would see him, I'd leave an apple or I'd leave a thing of Pop-Tarts on a rock for him. And every single time I go back to that spot, the food was gone. And he would never do it during the winter because I guess, being as intelligent as they are, he didn't want to leave footprints. So he was pretty good at, staying hidden. And I kind of get the feeling he did it because, if my dad had actually seen him, I have no doubt in my mind he probably would have shot at it.
Sure.
Or tried to kill it.
Right.
But I gotta get a drink of water.
Yeah, no problem. There's a lot of the area he's talking about, guys. Herman, out that way. There's a lot of reports, a lot of Bigfoot reports out that way.
I've got a interesting deal here. David, with your Native American background and with you having these, the multiple reports, I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that once you said who you was and I heard that story, I know 90% of your stories. When you have these sightings, with your Native American background, I'm sure you're probably more in tune with your spiritual side than, a lot of people. Do you feel that maybe that there, I guess the best way to say it, do you feel a spiritual influence or, do you feel that it's spiritual or do you feel that it's physical or both or?
With the Bigfoot, I definitely think it's both because with the Bigfoot, like when I talked to Vic Cundiff about it, which was my first true encounter, seeing the Sasquatch as close as I've ever seen it before, was what came a couple of days before that Dogman encounter. And Bigfoot that day had been following me during a deer drive. And basically he was just staying off to my right. And he was following me as I was walking through the woods. So I think that he was staying in between me and something else, trying to protect me. Because that day, when he was standing in between me, I could distinctly hear something else off to his right, walking through the spruce trees, walking as I would walk. And what they were doing is they actually would grunt and growl back and forth with each other. And it actually, towards the end of the drive, I think it was probably 40 minutes into the walk, the Bigfoot actually had taken off to my right. He ran off into the woods, and I could hear him squabbling with something in the trees, like they were fighting with each other. And then, I basically took off for the rest of the drive, and I didn't hear anything else after that. I mean, once I had walked about 200 yards away, it got quiet.
Wow. That's interesting.
Makes me wonder about, I just an idea, but could it possibly be a juvenile was messing with you and maybe one of its adult family members were trying to pull him back and get him away from you? Because it seems like juveniles are the ones that always end up fucking with people.
Sasquatch, Shawn, or Dogman?
I kind of get the feeling that it was the Bigfoot was protecting me from that Dogman that I saw.
Oh, okay.
Because whatever this thing was that was stalking me as the Bigfoot was walking in between me. And the thing is, I couldn't see the Bigfoot that well because where I was walking, it was just the thickest, nastiest, bramble and, berry briars that you could possibly think of. I mean, I got scraped to hell walking through there. But when you're doing a drive, you have to walk through that stuff because the bucks actually like to hang out in there.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was walking through, I was only catching glimpses of him, and I could see like the top of his head over the bushes. And he was looking at me, and then he'd look back over at the spruce trees. And I mean, from the sounds I was hearing, they sounded distinctly canine over in the spruce trees.
Oh,
so I think that I'm sure that this Bigfoot was probably, he was well aware of this Dogman that was over in the spruce trees, which could have even been potentially hunting me because I was just a young guy. So, I mean, sees a young hunter. I mean, food is food.
Well, and you know how many times you hear of Sasquatch running buffer, fighting with Dogman over the human.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to reloop back. Do you feel the same way about the Dogman, that it's spiritual and physical, or?
I think so. I mean, I'd like to lean that way. I mean, the only thing I don't believe about it is like people say, "Oh, I think it's a government experiment." And it's just like it couldn't be a government experiment because if you look at it from a scientific view, it's like if we could genetically engineer an animal like that, we would have a Jurassic Park right now. It's like if we could just take DNA, splice it together, and make an animal, you know, we would be living in an age where it would be just like Jurassic Park. You go to a park and you could see an extinct animal walking around. If there was government projects like that were this dangerous, people would be getting killed left and right, and you know, and eaten. But I think that, you know, based on, you know, experiences that people have had, like with seeing Dogman, or you know, even like the cases where missing 411 comes up, where they talk about people that have been killed. You know, I think that leans into like the more physical type being, because I mean, these things, they live, they breathe, they eat, they shit.
Yeah.
You know? But that's just how it is. I mean, but in terms of it being a government project or some experiment that went wrong, I think when people talk about that, I think they're kind of full of shit.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm one, you know, I do believe they're flesh and blood, but you know, Gary, we've talked about this several times. I do believe there's abilities we don't understand yet, whether they're a biological ability or whether they are a supernatural ability. Gary, I didn't use the other word. They use supernatural for you, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm still. It's a toughie. It really is.
Well,
You know.
Yeah, I mean,
Especially
it's going to
with,
remain a mystery forever.
It is, especially with you know, my native background as well. I'd like to think there's a touch of a spiritual aspect to it there too. You know,
once again, we have to go back to what we do know and what we hear, and that's, you know, legends, and we know that every legend has a base and story.
yes,
And Dogman goes back as far as the Sumerians and as far as the Egyptians with
Anubis.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I wanted to ask, yeah, David, you know, I know you do taking all the Dogman reports. I know you've probably heard a lot of, but do you think that, would you describe your encounters and your eye witnesses with the Dogman? Would you say that it was Anubis looking?
It's definitely not really Anubis looking. It was just more like your general classic werewolf, you know, like the more canine type ones that are just really ugly looking.
Yeah,
It's like the underworld type.
underworld
Yep,
type deal.
like, I mean,
yeah,
like super canine looking face. I mean, like I said,
Okay.
the movie Bad Moon, it looked just like the werewolf from that movie.
Okay. Have you
I'm
seen?
gonna
I'll have to check that
I'm gonna
out.
check. Same here. Yeah.
Have you seen the movie Dog Soldiers?
No.
That's actually one of my favorites.
Okay.
There's a couple of people that have told me they've had encounters with ones that look just like those.
Yeah.
What's the difference?
Underworld looking ones. Yeah.
What do they kind of look like? What do they look like in that?
Like the wolves off of Underworld.
Okay.
With the inverted legs backwards and real gangly.
Gotcha.
Yep. They're really tall too.
Okay. Gotcha. Some of my favorite movies, those underworld movies, are great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they're good.
Fantastic.
What do you think is the difference in between? Well, tell us about your Wendigo. I mean, I'm real curious about that. What makes you think that it was a Wendigo? And to tell us about that encounter, if you don't mind.
Oh yeah. This was actually on a hike that we did up in the Adirondacks. I went up there with my friend. I can't mention his name, but yeah, one day we just decided, you know, let's go for a hike, and we went up into the Adirondacks and on the Five Ponds Wilderness area. We went on the trailhead there, and the snow wasn't too deep, but you know, we got to Wanakina, and then we parked the car and we took the trail and started walking. And the entire day, like, the animals were they were super quiet. The birds weren't even making a sound, and the woods was it had this general eeriness to it. And the thing that really freaked me out was, like, I got this weird, it was almost like a spiritual type feeling that something evil was in the area. And once we got about, it was about an hour into our hike, like, I kept hearing what, like, I'm sure you guys have heard, like, elk, like when they use their bugle calls. And it sounded like that almost. And the scary thing is, like, we don't have elk here in New York
not
State.
anymore.
Like, We might have moose
Yeah.
occasionally, but I mean,
No.
they don't sound like that. But I kept hearing like a mix between like what sounded like an elk bugling and like what sounded like groaning or like growling.
No.
And what happened next was like once I got this eerie feeling that something was watching us. And this was about an hour and 20 minutes into our walk. I decided, let's turn around and head back. And as we were walking back, I mean, I got the feeling that something was following us to the trees, and it was the area that we were in because of how much snow had fallen. The trees were covered. So if there was a deer standing there 10 feet away, you wouldn't see it. And finally got down to about the 10-minute marker. We were just about out to the trailhead, and this thing let off one of those really loud, like bugle type calls. And when I turned around, I thought I saw something in the trees rushing towards us, because as it was coming towards us, the snow was falling off the branches. And whatever was coming towards us, you could just barely see it in the branches, in the snow that was falling down. And I thought I saw antlers. And that's when I saw the antlers, immediately, like in the back of my mind, like I had like stories of the Wendigo flashing through my head. And when my buddy turned around and saw it, he freaked out, and we just took off running back to the car. And by the time we got back to the trailhead, this thing had stopped chasing us. But just as we were leaving, I put the window down and listened, and you could just distinctly hear it do one of those loud, like growl/bugle calls out in the distance. And the scary thing about it is it was so loud that when it did that, like some of the snow was falling off the trees because the trees were like vibrating from the sound. And I mean, that was the fastest we ever drove out of there.
Wow. I got told, by a native relative of mine that out of all the cryptids, they are the most dangerous because they can get in your head very, very, very easily.
The thing about that, which scared me, is because the Wendigo is a cannibalistic
Yes, it is.
spirit.
Yeah.
And what was really freaky is because on our hike out, we were actually talking about going to get something to eat, because I was actually really hungry, and so was he, and we didn't bring anything to eat. And all this, talk about that, I think this thing might have associated it with, because it's cannibalistic. Yep. Maybe it saw it as an opportunity, as, maybe if one of these guys is, has the spirit of the Wendigo, like, possessing them, then it could, take the opportunity to possess somebody, and then, there you go. There's another Wendigo.
Yeah.
That's what really freaked me out about it.
Yep.
That's just because of what I heard from the legend.
Yeah. That's how they do their thing. Yeah, that's pretty. That's pretty scary. Definitely not something I'd want to run into.
He doesn't want to go up there anymore.
Did you catch any details? I mean, what exactly did you see?
I mean, from what I saw, I mean, just from that short glimpse of what I was seeing running through the trees, was, I mean, the antlers were very similar to that of an elk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know if I was looking at it correctly, but the antlers were very similar to that of an elk. But if you look closely, like through the snow as this thing was going through the trees, it almost looked like a skeletal like head as well.
Oh wow!
So I mean, it was literally your run of the mill, Wendigo that you would see in like a book or on the internet.
Right.
How far, Jeremiah? How far is this from you?
Where he's talking about?
Yeah.
About hour 15. Where'd you say? Where was this again? Where'd you say it was?
This was at the trailhead in Wanakina, so like just outside of Cranberry Lake.
Oh, just about hour and 15 minutes.
Okay,
I can make it.
Coming up there to visit you.
Yeah, about an hour and 15. Yeah, 70 some miles.
Nope, ain't happening. I ain't coming up there to visit you ever. You can come see me.
Yeah.
I can deal with my Oklahoma Native American spirits, my deer ladies and the Kennies. I ain't doing no Wendigos. Nope.
Yeah, they do. That area. I have heard a lot of aggressive reports out of there, with a lot of them people not knowing what they were dealing with. Just had that sixth sense that they weren't dealing with a regular forest animal,
Hmm.
but they were
Yeah,
dealing with something else.
I've
Yeah.
I've heard a couple people talk about like spirits like that up there, and I mean I've never heard too many Dogman related stories. I've heard
Right.
Bigfoot stories.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Without a doubt.
David, I'm curious. We've both done this research. I mean, I definitely tell you're well versed in in all of this. What's your theories on dogmen? And some people say that they see dogmen and Sasquatches together. Like cohabitating and running like in packs together and stuff. What's your thoughts on that?
I don't think I'd believe that somebody saying that they've been running together, because I mean you got to think of like there's species of animals that'll coexist with each other. I mean like there's a species of tarantula that'll keep a frog underneath in its den that'll keep other insects and whatnot from eating its eggs. But I mean if you look at something as large as like a Bigfoot and a Dogman, I mean they're both large animals. They both need lots of food. I mean, one obviously is an omnivore. I mean, Bigfoot obviously eats both, meat and vegetables. Dogman's a predator. But the fact, I don't think they'd be running together, because I mean, there'd be too many territorial disputes where, one would kill the other.
And they know that, and I think they know what a fight can do. They know what infection. They're smart enough to know infection will cause death, and these. So yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you on that. I think that's total BS.
I would lean to think that way myself too, because like you said, they're both apex predators, and
absolutely
they would actually compete and go at. And we hear stories here and here in the South, one of the more famous, which we're still trying to track down and prove if it's real. If you listen to Nick Cundiff's show, The Siege of Lockett Ranch,
Oh, that was an intense one.
Yeah, that was a great story. I love, and I love the detail and stuff that's involved in that. We got some folks in Alabama. I've got some, like a sister show in Alabama that's not very far from Taylor, Mississippi. They're actually trying to get over there and do how would you say, research to see if there was a Lockett Ranch. But what I was getting at is, in that they talk about the story of them to get rid of the. They go up and get the Sasquatch to come down. The legend was the Native Americans went up and got the Sasquatch to come down and do a war. I would lean to be, more that way. I still, I would think my opinion has changed a little bit. Shawn's gonna laugh at me on this, but I would lean to say that if Dogman is, and I'm leaning to say that it is real, but it's demonic and spiritual. I mean, it's just biomechanically and biologically. I could understand a primate and human hybrid, but a dog and human hybrid would have to have an influence of something paranormal, or whether it be or alien or something, or genetic.
Even the type, Gary, that I was talking about with the anthropologically speaking, I see what you're saying as far as the backwards legs.
Yeah.
What about something like I was describing with legs like ours, feet like ours? You know what I mean?
Well, you even look at the. I mean, I'm not an expert on genetics, but I mean, canid genetics and Homo sapien or primate genetics, just unless there's an outside stimulus, I don't think they would match. But we have so many stories of Sasquatch and primates, in history breeding with humans. They're there. I would almost have to lean that it's demonic or something with an outside influence, whether it be alien or
sure. It's just one of those things, like you said, David, just one of those things that we're not gonna find out.
I still don't want to see them.
I mean, Yeah, it's like I lean both ways. It's like they could be spiritual, demonic, but at the same time, I mean, they could be a flesh and blood creature, maybe just some like the missing link, I guess.
Or
So to put it.
an anomaly,
Yep.
of some sort.
Have you ever
And-
heard of a non-aggressive, Dogman encounter? Or I mean, everything I've heard has been they've been aggressive.
I mean, there's been plenty of encounters I've heard of them being non-aggressive. Like, I mean, Vic's got a couple shows. I'm sure that
I've heard a couple of them. Yeah.
told about an encounter that wasn't really necessarily aggressive. But I mean, a lot of the episodes that I'm drawn to are the ones where they're kind of hyper aggressive. Like, I mean, this will be a shout out to Josh Turner. The episode where I can't remember which number it was, but he talks about his the Hernandez Ranch. One of the members there, Joe, I think was Jojo. When he was working inside of the house, that Dogman, the black one, actually had tried to go. It got into the house and went after Joe, or thought it was going after Joe, but he got out of the house in time, and it I guess it caused some damage in the house. Like, it broke the door down. There was claw marks on the wall. It pissed on the floor in the kitchen. Yeah. And then it broke the garage door when he took off out of the driveway. And I mean, from what that story was telling me, I think that thing was definitely hyper aggressive. It was in predator mode. I think it was probably looking at Jojo as food.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Well, you're talking about Josh. I'm actually out here by Josh. I'm just north of him, probably about 7 hours. I know Josh and partner in crime, which is not his partner in crime anymore, but both of them are great guys. And we actually went down to that was the only Dogman investigation I went on, was down to the Dogman church where they have the old well where they say they.
Oh, yep.
I've heard of that case. Yeah.
It's downright scary, down there. Is
that where they climbed out?
Yeah. That area is just downright crazy. Joe and them, their story is incredible, where they get the pup and raise it, and it's incredible. I just feel you're the first one I've sit down and outside of Jacob. I don't know if you've heard Jacob Gomez's story where he's seen one at like 10 feet, but you're the first one that I've interviewed that has an extended knowledge base of them, and I have to lean if they are real. They're definitely there's a variation in them, like there is Sasquatch. You hear aggressive, you hear non-aggressive, you hear.
Yep.
It's interesting.
My personal opinion, I think probably nothing to do with the type, maybe. Like with Sasquatch. The alpha of the group, how it sets the tone for the rest of the group. Maybe it's just, who knows? There's so many possible answers for these questions that we're all asking and wondering about. It's crazy. And so many possible answers. That's why we're here.
Yeah. Talk about it and try and figure it out and give people a place to share their experience without ridicule,
Absolutely.
I'm still under the assumption that if it's a Dogman, I'm going to let you guys take care of it, and I'm going the other direction.
I mean,
I ain't doing no Dogman. Nope.
It's crazy how many places you hear these Dogman stories come out of too. I mean, it's like the craziest one I heard was there's a gentleman that he was actually in, the heck was it? It's one of the podcasts that they were doing. It was a live podcast. I think it might have been, it was one of the other paranormal groups. I'd have to think what it was, but talked about his encounter. He said that it wasn't his encounter, it was somebody else's, but somebody had reported seeing like a hyena type Dogman get killed. And this was in Africa where they saw it. It was actually dragged into the water by a Nile crocodile.
Oh,
it
wow.
had gone down.
Shit.
It had gone down to get a drink, and of course, people think Dogman's the top dog, and it's just like, yeah.
I mean, you take a 20-foot Nile croc, and you're not looking at too much that can take it out.
Yeah, it came out of the water. It chomped down on it, dragged it in. I mean, once a croc has you, you're done.
You're done. Yeah. 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 For sure. That's it. That's interesting. I never heard that before.
It was
It's-
interesting when I heard it. I mean, the guy could have been full of shit. You never know. But I mean, when
But
he
still, it's
talked
still a
about
good
it,
story.
but still, it was entertaining. I was like, that's a pretty crazy story. But I mean, I mean, there's people that have reported sightings, seen them in Africa, South America.
Good
They're
point.
everywhere, even Australia.
Australia. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's got to be some credence behind it.
Gotta be.
There's got to be.
Mhm.
Just I've never physically seen the evidence like I have with
Yeah.
the Sasquatch.
Yep.
I wish I've actually come across physical evidence, but I have yet to. I mean, coming across hair would be cool. I mean, I'm sure there's
No.
people that have come across maybe some physical evidence. I mean, I think there's a couple people on Vic's show that said that they found hair. One of them, I think they mentioned something about finding feces, but
Mm.
I'm not exactly sure on that.
Yep. We only need one of these stories to be true, just one.
Right.
So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
there's too many to deny the fact that these things are running around along with some other cryptids that are, the rake. There's so much weird shit that
Oh yeah.
you can't dismiss it all. You
You
can't just say it's all
You
bullshit.
can't. 5 years ago, it would have lasted all this shit. To be honest with you, but
Yeah.
not anymore. No.
Listen, I'm having a hard enough time with Dogman on top of that. You have to go bring the rake in. I'm gonna
Yeah.
have to call the Ghostbusters before this show's over with.
Yeah.
I mean, I can give you a one-up and tell you about the giant serpent that people have apparently been seeing here on the reserve.
Yeah, I've
Oh,
heard about
man.
it too. Go ahead.
Tell
Go
us
ahead.
about that. That's interesting.
I've heard a few
Yeah, it's like-
stories.
Yeah.
But yeah, shoot. Go ahead, man. Let her
Yeah.
rip.
Yeah, it's like I don't know how many people I've heard this from, but I mean, there's two guys last year, or the year before, year before last, that were telling us about seeing this serpent, and they said there's people that live on the St. Lawrence and they've seen this gigantic snake-like creature, like just sunbasking on their dock. And I think the thing is like, it's longer than their dock. It's all coiled up, and they say when this thing slithers back into the water, it's like 30 or 40
Is that the
feet
one that
long.
wraps around itself around the
Yeah.
buoy in the shipping channel? Yep.
It hangs out near
Yep.
the power dam and over near the
Yep.
the locks.
Yeah,
as well.
I figured it was the same one. Yeah, it's supposed to be like 30, 35 feet long, something like that.
And it's all
Yeah,
around
it's
the
like
Native American
there's-
reservation.
Yes.
See, here we go. We gotta have
Yep.
him on the other series.
Oh yeah, we're gonna for sure. That's yeah. I've heard of him or her or wherever it is too. Yeah. I heard that story. Guy who told me that for you know the guy. I'm not gonna say his name online, but he told me that a couple of years ago about the case where they saw it wrapped around the shipping channel around the buoy. And I'm like thinking to myself, good God, that's huge. It's huge. My question to myself was, what scared that thing up from the bottom to wrap itself around the buoy?
I don't want to know. I
But-
don't have nightmares.
That's St.
It's
Lawrence
St.
River.
Lawrence, man. You never know. It's a monster. But
Yeah,
it's
it's like the stories I've heard from
oh
divers.
my God.
Like there's divers that were over by the locks. Guy said that he went diving down there and shone his flashlight over near the lock, and he said he saw an eyeball the size
Yes.
of a dinner plate just sitting there
Yeah, I
looking at
heard
him. And then he
heard
got
a
out of
story similar. My dad's buddy is an underwater welder, and he was in the same spot, and he went down and
Mhm.
said he shined his light, and he saw, but he's not sure what it was. It could have been, there's still sturgeon hanging around, but I mean, he said this thing was 16 feet long, and what do we have left in St. Lawrence? White sturgeon? They don't get that big.
Oh, lake sturgeon.
Lake sturgeon do. We still have them in St. Lawrence.
Oh yeah, they're in there. I mean, we just don't see them too
Yeah.
often. I'm actually doing a project with them right now, but I haven't seen any large adults lately. We just caught young
Yeah,
ones.
he said this thing was about 16 feet long. He said, I got the hell out of that water and I never went back in.
I was fixing to say I've seen, that was in the Pacific Northwest, but white sturgeons get 15, 20 feet long. But they might not be up in that part of the country. David, have you heard vocals from Dogman?
I actually got a recording of a howl. I don't have it with me, but I think Vic might have it on file. I'd have to ask him because I sent it to him.
Jeremiah, you think I ought to do it?
What's that?
I
Play
think
that I recorded that everybody's trying to tell me is a Dogman.
Yep, I do.
Take me just a second to pull that up.
Let her rip, Tater Chip.
That's right. There you go.
The reason David, I'll kind of tell you a little bit of backstory on this. I recorded this on my property just a few months ago, and in all the shows that I was doing, I met with a person that actually had found Dogman evidence 30 miles south of there within 10 days of when I recorded this. We was under the assumption that this was Sasquatch, because I do have Sasquatch activity, but now I've sent it off to a few people and they're saying that it sounds more canid than it does Sasquatch. So let me play this for you so I can find it right quick, and I'm curious to get your opinion on it. Does that sound like a what you've heard, Dogman, or would? And please tell me no.
I'm not gonna lie, it sounded pretty canid.
I know.
It did, man.
I want to hear it. Like I said, I have a hard enough time dealing with Sasquatch. I don't want Sasquatch on the property either. I want them to go.
It does sound canid.
I've had a lot of folks say that, and it's just, and especially with them supposedly finding evidence, which Jeremiah, we're going to get with them pretty soon, and I'd like to have them on here.
Yeah.
Their Dogman episode down there. It's literally like 40 miles from the farm. And
well, then if it's that close to the farm, man, that would not surprise me one bit.
No,
that you got him hanging around.
I'm muting you. I don't want to hear it. I mean, folks, you gotta, y'all know. I mean, it's hard enough when you see a Sasquatch, in the situation as we are, that these guys know, David, but it terrifies me when I had mine. I mean, I didn't go back. It took me 4 years to even go back to the site. And what's funny is the first time I went back in the woods by myself, I recorded this. I mean, I had been in the woods with family and friends and research teams, but I went down there by myself with the presumption that I'm going to, face these. I didn't even have my dog with me. Normally I have my dog with me. And we ended up recording that. And then I say me, but my dad was about 100 yards up the hill. But it's like every time, luckily I went down last night and we didn't have a whole lot going on. So that kind of easy. It's hard enough dealing with and that's where I joke around about it, but I'm being wholeheartedly, if a Sasquatch you can deal with psychologically, because they're almost mainstream now. But when you throw something tainted in there, it just defies all logic.
Yep.
Yeah. And that's the hard time people have with it, I think,
Now, can I ask you something, David? When it comes to prints, have you found legitimate prints?
I actually have a cast of one.
How big is it? How big is it, like, compared to, let's say, a Great Dane or something like that?
A lot bigger. I mean, the paw print that we have, my uncle casted it in concrete, because that's all he had to cast it with. They actually found it when they're building my grandmother's garage. It's literally about the size of my hand, and I got actually fairly large hands.
Okay.
And I mean, compared to like a Great Dane, it was definitely bigger, for sure.
So you're saying that the evidence and experience that you've had that the tracks of a Dogman are just a big canid track.
Oh yeah, they're absolutely huge. I mean, it's like, because I mean, I've seen plenty of dogs around here, and there's people that have, they have all kinds of mutts, mixed breed dogs, and some of them are pretty big.
Yeah,
Sure.
But when you look at their footprints, it's like their footprints still they're not that big. But when you see like an abnormal sized canine print, it's pretty easy to tell that it's like this is not from a dog.
yeah,
Mhm.
Or even a wolf. Because I mean, we don't have wolves around here because back in the day, hunters slaughtered the ever living hell out of them, so they're no longer here.
Well, but you do know that the wolf population is coming back. Even in that area, they're coming down from Canada. But me and Jeremy,
Deep Adirondacks, but where he's talking about.
Yeah, there's too many people in this area.
Yeah, not where he's talking about, but in the Deep Adirondacks, they're coming back.
The reason I want to get back on that track, I wanted to ask you, Shawn, very good question. I'm actually a tracker, so you've never seen the typical Dogman, the elongated with the claws. It looks like almost like a human foot with claws on the front of it.
In terms of seeing something like in close proximity to that was actually on the like on my dad's property where I had the Dogman encounter.
Yeah.
We have an old school bus there, and there was actually one point where this was surprisingly what led up to me seeing this. My uncle actually had reported to me that when he went back to the corner of my grandfather's property to go get in his deer blind, he said as he was getting in, something growled at him. And he said it was such a deep guttural growl. He said that he felt it in his heart, like it kind of felt like it messed with his heart a little bit. It was that deep. And when he told me about that, he said that he also found some weird tracks walking back there. So I said, screw it, I guess I'll walk back there. And I went back with my friend, and I found these weird set of tracks that were near this old school bus that we had. And the school bus had like moisture on the windows. Well, whatever it was, I guess there must have been an animal or something living in the bus. I guess it must have tried to get to it, but it put its hand up on the window, and you could distinctly see like almost like that raccoon like looking handprint, but bigger than a human hand. So it's like, unless there's a raccoon the size of a man around here, that wasn't a raccoon that made that handprint.
Jeremiah, you ought to send him that picture of that track you got down in North Carolina.
That's
because I've never seen nothing like it. I mean, I've seen similar.
No, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, we're after the show. I've always been curious about the tracks because I tracked something in southeastern Oklahoma that literally had to have been the skinniest bear track I ever seen in my life, or something else. I mean, it looked like the back 2 feet of a bear, and then the front was kind of canted, but the back feet was long, and it had to be because usually even a black bear got a kind of a wider foot, but this was narrow. And I was curious to see if you had actually had an experience. I'd love to find somebody that has seen, a lot of Dogman tracks, so I could, kind of trick their mind a little bit and ask them because.
And this was, this is a very weird.
Well, the whole situation around that track too, with. But. And I have to ask another question because we're all here to learn, and you definitely got better knowledge base than I do. What's your thoughts on the Dogman interacting with people, as in like toying with them and messing with them? Because even Joe and them said a little bit about how they would get kind of vindictive, and when I say Joe, I'm talking about the brothers down in Texas.
Oh, I definitely think that they'll pester people because, I mean, if you think about it, I mean, as much as we weren't there, I mean, they obviously have their own turf. I mean, these things, you got to think most predators will stake out a certain section of land. And, it's like you think of like lions in Africa, they'll stake out miles and miles and miles of territory just for themselves.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming these things do the same. So, I mean, whatever, whichever dogman, this one that saw Joe, obviously they saw him as a threat, or they just, maybe they just wanted to, pester him just for the sake of him living there, maybe as like a sign that he should leave. And I mean, there's other people, like, like, take for example, I was talking about earlier, that little old lady, the one that got killed in her house. Maybe that particular dogman had been eyeballing her for, years and years and years at a time, and finally just got sick of her being there, and maybe that's why it went in there and killed her. So the experience with Joe, maybe it's possible that this particular dogman just had gotten sick of him being in its area, and held a grudge against him for some weird reason. I don't know how they think, but
on for a period of years, though. I mean, there was an actual pack interaction with that whole family, all the way back to the grandfather.
Yeah, and maybe they just have a grudge against them.
Could be.
They have some type of intelligence to them, so it's a possibility that they don't like.
If I remember right, it seemed like the one that they raised eventually became the alpha, and things kind of settled down, in the pack. They even talked about some of the pack dynamics of, how they interacted and stuff with them. I'm about to re-listen to that series of shows again.
I think it was the dogman named Stripes, I think.
Yeah.
I think it was.
All right, I got it right here. See if it's anything.
Because what it sounds like, I guess, Stripes, the guy took care of him. I mean, it's like a dog. I mean, you hear things about, you hear cases with guys where, they'll rescue like a dog, and the dog they'll defend their owner to the death.
Yes.
So maybe Stripes, it's just, he had such a great respect for the family, the fact that he had raised him and took care of him, that when he became the alpha, he basically got everybody in order, and, basically told them to stop pestering the family. And then eventually, maybe when Stripes passed away, if he passed away from old age, another pack member took over, and now they're starting to do their old ways again, pestering the family again.
I've always been a true believer in that, with the alpha setting the tone.
Well,
I mean, it's logical.
Even with a regular wolf pack, it will,
Oh, absolutely.
Or even dog, and that's what I'm saying. David, you'd have to see some of my stuff, with my dog. That's intelligent. Some of the behavior this guy does, I swear, if he had opposable thumbs, he'd walk in the icebox and grab me a Dr. Pepper and open it up and drink it, because they're so dynamic in their expressions. Shawn, what's your I'm curious, you're kind of my go-to man when it comes to, you keep me from going too far one direction or the other. What's your thoughts on all this? I mean,
this is where I get biblical, and the book of Enoch and Nephilim. I think that some of these creatures are definitely offspring. They're bastard offspring of fallen angels. I think that's what Bigfoot is. I think that's what these things possibly could be. I think there's demonic forces at work. I think we're coexisting with these things right now, but there's going to come a time when there's going to be a war, the good and evil, and these things are going to rise up and they're going to come against us. So that's my honest opinion.
No,
I know it was like as soon as you brought that up, it brought to light like what would your thoughts be like on your classic European werewolf? Like you wonder how those legends came to rise.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. You even go back farther than that and go to all the ancient cultures, even the ancient Japanese and the Chinese and the Mongolian, talk about fox demons and dog demons. And you get into the Nepalese, Nepal and Tibet.
Oh, yeah.
They talk about it. I mean, it's a normal thing with a cult. You know, all the ancient cultures, not just certain ones. I mean, straight across the board, even back into the First Nations in the United States. So there's
the First Nations battling giants.
Yeah,
there's a lot of stories of that too.
It's crazy. It's all over the world. I sent you those pictures, Dave. Those tracks.
Oh, perfect.
But I know you probably can't look at them now, but you're on with us unless you can. I don't know. You take it a peek.
Yeah, he's still in. Yeah. I'm leaning towards. I just don't want to believe it. I'm having a hard enough time dealing with. I heard a story, where they had interacted with the and David, you might verify it, but I heard a story from a lady that interacted with spirits and stuff and said that the Dogman was specifically to fight giants because of the way that they was made. They could bite down into the giants' trapezoids with their jaws and their teeth and stuff. But we've got a guy here in Oklahoma, a real famous story. You've heard the story of Wiley Dave, haven't you, David?
I don't think I've heard that one yet. No.
The game professional game caller. He was a professional he made game calls, and he was out in western Oklahoma and seen one through a scope at like I think 100 yards. And I've met the guy at Bigfoot festivals, and the guy's deadly serious. I mean, he's just as serious as I am, and I have no reason to doubt him. I just don't want to believe it,
Yeah.
I've heard too many stories of them unloading an M16 or an AR-15 in these guys, and it not affect them. Look at
nothing happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Maybe you just need a 50 cal or bigger.
All right, that was the trick.
Yeah,
the priest to anoint the bullets or something.
AR-10 with an AR-10 with 308, man, and 40 round magazines. Just keep going.
Yeah,
you gotta have the good red dot scope on there, though. Just center mass, boom, 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 boom.
You saying that? I've got my 338, but I'm thinking that scar chamber for 308 might be the thing to keep.
Yeah,
it could be. Could be.
You don't know if you want to grab a gun or a Bible. It's one of them deals.
Both.
It's just hard to deal with.
Pray on the way in and pray on the way out. Every time.
Yeah. I like to pack big bore anyway.
What's that?
I like to pack big bore.
Yeah.
I've always hunted with a 45-70, but I mean,
I was just gonna say that.
There's nothing saying I wouldn't dump some money into, say, a 416 Rigby or maybe bigger.
I've always been comfortable with the 12 gauge loaded up with buckshot. They get nice and close. I feel nice and secure.
The thing about it is, though, is if these things move, like they say they do, they get that close, you're not going to have. Are we going to have the reaction time to?
I mean, probably not. My honest opinion, I don't care what you're carrying. They want to take you. They want to get you. They're going to get you.
You'll eventually kill it. I think it'll get you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, what I've seen, and that's what I'm saying is if a Dogman has the canid attributes, and they're as fast as my dog. I've got a Belgian Malinois, David, that we've clocked at 38 mile an hour. And you can ask Jeremiah and these guys. I've got a barrel out here half full. I'll have to send you the video. Half full of, it's a 55-gallon plastic barrel, half full of sand, and he'll grab it and spin it around in circles like this when I give him the command.
Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy, yeah.
Take that, he's 50 pounds. You take that and look at what wolves do.
No, jeez.
They'll pull down a moose,
But bison.
Oh, yeah.
It's insane.
7 feet tall, 450 pounds. No,
especially working in a pack, the way they wear you down, and they're gonna get you.
They don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm gonna have nightmares.
Right.
So when we start reading one of these priests, that movie Priest, they're supposed to be able to kill vampires and everything, or we need to.
Oh yeah.
We need to resurrect Van Helsing and maybe get some of his genetics and inject it in some super soldiers or something.
There we go. There we go. That's a good movie.
It is a good movie. That is
Excellent movie.
prime example of another alteration of the Dogman, because
Absolutely.
And
absolutely.
That's more conducive to the Beast of Bray Road, the reports up there. But
yep. No. Yep. Great movie. Well, gentlemen, I hate to do this. I always hate to do it, but Dave, love to have you back on. Have you on our other program. We get it going. If you're game.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure, man. It was that went great. Awesome.
Thanks a lot for coming on, Dave.
Yeah, it was a real pleasure. And let's get together, man, and go out.
Yeah, definitely.
You're not more than 10 miles down the road from me, for crying out loud. So
no, Dave, if you take my best friend out, don't get him eaten by a dog man, because that's my best friend. I had to come to New York to a funeral and put it on his gravestone. He got ate by a dog man.
Oh, don't worry. They'll probably go after me more than anything. There's a lot more fat on me.
The going saying down here, when everybody goes out with me, I'm kind of crippled up. They don't have to outrun the Sasquatch or the Dogman. They just outrun me.
Outrun you, right?
Run.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. Thanks to all you viewers out there who support the show. We will see you again next week for another killer episode. And David, thanks a lot again, man. We really appreciate it. It was a real honor.
It sure was.
Yep.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right, guys. Y'all have a good night.
Have a good night, guys.
You too.